Oh boy, Luka Doncic, man. Luka Doncic. We just wrapped up game 2 in Minnesota. Dallas with an incredible comeback win in a game that I kind of felt like they came out extremely flat. They didn't have the energy coming out of the gate that I liked what I saw in game 1 that ultimately got them to win. Luka, Luka, Luka. Boy, 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 boy. I originally picked the Dallas Mavericks in 6, I believe, on the Numbers on the Board podcast. My biggest reasoning was because I felt that they were going to have a slight advantage in being able to attack Rudy in the pick and roll a lot more than previous teams did in previous series or whatnot with Kyrie and Luka. Obviously, it wasn't going to be anything that they're just going to dominate them with, but in key plays like that, and in key possessions down the stretch, when you have two incredible ball handlers and shot makers like Kyrie and Luka who can get it from 3, they can go inside, get to the free throw line, they can get it in the mid-range. These two dudes are lethal in that aspect. Coming out of the gate, my notes in the first quarter, I got so many notes. This is probably the most notes I've taken all playoffs on a game or whatnot. The first thing that I will say, this was another game where it kind of felt like Kyrie Irving was coming out not as aggressive. And I didn't like it because in game 1, I felt like it really set the tone when he came out super aggressive and was looking for his own shot. He kind of set the tone. They played with pace. I feel like in this game, they tried to replicate some of that pace a little bit, especially when Luka got out of the game. It wasn't the same type of success, but I still like the attempt and the thought process of trying to speed up some of those transition looks to allow the offense to try to get some flow and momentum without having to go against a set Minnesota defense every single offensive possession, because this is the league's best defense, so it's going to be tough to score. Another thing that I got in my notes, Karl Anthony Towns, the 2 fouls that he picked up in the first 4 minutes of the game that he played in, that wasn't – one of them was kind of understandable. The first one, again, just another one of those silly fouls. This is going to be a talking point all playoffs for Karl Anthony Towns, and it's going to continue to be a talking point in this series, particularly if he cannot stop fouling. Some of the fouls, I said, we understand he's going to commit fouls, but he always has 1 or 2 that you're kind of like, you didn't need that, and it always comes back to bite. So seeing him get that second foul early was a little disappointing. And then you go on to see he didn't play again in the rest of that first quarter. He ended up playing only 4 minutes in the first quarter. Anthony Edwards started off in attack mode. I think that's what you really wanted to see. I was very critical of him in my game 1 video when I talked about majority of those shots coming from the three-point line, a lot of settling. This game came out of the gate extremely different. I got the first quarter official scores report in front of me. Didn't shoot the ball well. Neither him or Cat came out shooting the ball well. But you still like the aggression, and you like the mindset with the aggression. 6 free throws in the first quarter, made 5 of them. Ended up with 10 points, leading them and scoring out of the gate. And then offensively, off the bench, you get Naz Reid, who came out and had 6 points in that first quarter, 2 threes. We already know the storyline with him. Just came out and knocked down shots in a timely manner for the Timberwolves. I really appreciate seeing him play this way, and I think it gives them that added advantage. He damn near single-handedly outscores the Mavericks bench in this entire series. Like, that's not a stretch to me. When we get to the end of the series, no matter how many games this goes, because you have to understand that even with the Mavericks up 2-0, winning 2 games on the road, Minnesota is still a team on any given night, home or away, can take a game and extend the series. So by no means is this series over. At the end of the series, though, I am going to be very candid in looking into if Naz Reid was able to single-handedly outscore the bench of the Mavericks, because he's just been on a heater, and he's playing like the 6th man of the year, and it's always good to see. For the Mavericks, we didn't get the aggressive Kyrie. He had four first quarter points, 2 of 5 shooting, but we did get an aggressive Luka. 3 of 5 from the field, 2 of 2 from the three-point line, got to the free throw line once on an and 1, I believe. And had 9 points. You got an aggressive gaffer out of the gate, and I really did like that. I like some of the minutes from Hardy. Jaden Hardy really gave him some good minutes off the bench. I will say this is a tough game for P.J. Washington. We'll talk about P.J. Washington, but I really felt like this was one of the tougher games for him in the playoffs. And then another big adjustment for me was seeing Rudy come out and blitz on the screen. So when they were doing a pick and roll in the beginning of the game, Rudy would go out there and it would force Luka to give up the ball. And when Luka gave up the basketball, credit to Dallas and their bigs, because especially Lively. I think Lively is an underrated passer. That's one of his draft notes from Duke. Very underrated passer. They were making the plays. They just weren't able to knock down the shots. You know what I mean? This is a game where you're going to see a lot of missed shots from the perimeter from P.J. Washington, especially shots that we got accustomed to seeing him make throughout the playoffs. Derrick Jones Jr. missed some shots. Kyrie Irving didn't hit his first three until the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of those shots that they were able to create from blitzing and hard hedging on the screens, they weren't able to capitalize on. First quarter, they were able to make 3 out of the 6, but 2 of those 3-point shots came from Luka Doncic, and the other one came from Jaden Hardy. He went 1 of 5 in the first quarter, but he was able to make that 1-3. So that's another big one. And then Naz Reid immediately came in. Immediately, Cat picked up his 2 fouls. He goes out. Reid comes in, right corner. Naz Reid immediately knocks down the 3. So that was pretty much the first quarter for me. The Timberwolves came out with a lot more energy. The Mavericks were real lackadaisical. Just didn't have a certain energy. It felt like Luka was going to have one of those games where he was going to try to do everything he could, but the rest of the team might not be able to keep up. Minnesota was making an adjustment by blitzing the screen, and some of these guys didn't look like they were going to make the certain amount of shots they were going to need to win this game. And it was one of those where it was like, hey, I think I even heard somebody on the broadcast say, or maybe at halftime, Chuck said, it seems like Dallas was okay with splitting. They got their game. They came into this game a little comfortable, not all the way ready to play. And it kind of felt like that was going to be a continuing thing going on in the second half. For the second quarter, 5-0 run to start. Another big thing was a 14-4 run, Nas 3. Dallas went on a stretch where they didn't score a point in 4 minutes. Luckily, they were able to come back and win this game. I'm just going to say that's what makes these type of wins so impressive, is because I look at the stuff. I got all these notes in front of me. I got the scores report in front of me. I got so many notes. It's hard for me to really even process it in the moment right now. I'm trying to, communicate it all to y'all. But for them to win a game where they had 0 points in almost a 5-minute stretch, we go to the second quarter shooting, and this was kind of the worst quarter for them. They shot 33% this quarter. They made 7 field goals, y'all. 7 field goals, 1 of 8 from 3. This is a quarter where Kyrie went off 2. Luka went 1 of 4. You got missed 3 from Exum, missed 3 from Hardaway Jr. And then on the flip side, they go 11 of 25. They go 50% from 3. And you were able to get to the free throw line. I will give Dallas that credit. But 7 of their points came at the free throw line. They just weren't able to buy a bucket in this quarter. And it was real slow for them. And you go into the half down 60-48. Minnesota has a 12-point cushion. Everything is going their way. They're cooking. Naz Reid comes out, hits 2 more threes. So he got 4 made threes at the half. And again, Anthony Edwards has not gotten to his bag yet. Anthony Edwards is only 1 of 4 in this quarter. Cat, 2 of 6, was able to finally play some real minutes because he only played 4. But you're going into the half and you're down 12, where Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards combined for 6 of 22. 6 of 22 for 22 points. And you're down 12. So for me, when I seen that at halftime, I'm like, man, what can Dallas do to kind of get going? They definitely need Kyrie to wake up. 2 of 8 in the first half with 5 points is just not good enough, in my opinion, for Kyrie. You're shooting 4 or 14, 28% from 3. That was kind of similar to the first game. So at some point, the Mavericks are going to have one of those nights, and of course, it's probably going to be at home. Shout out to my man D Mills. Role players play better at home. They're going to start making these 3-point shots. That's the biggest concerning thing for me, is in this first half, Minnesota did a good job. You're up 12. They're not making shots. You're making shots. You're doing your thing. You're capitalizing on it. But for them to ultimately come back and win this game without having one of those nights, it has to sting, because obviously you lose on a Luka game winning 3. Essentially, you couldn't make anything happen on the last 3 seconds. But when you go back and you see how poorly they shot the basketball, you have to anticipate an avalanche of threes happening in one of these games at home, if not both. And if they do have that, can you weather the storm to steal a game or two? Well, right now you need two. Can you weather the storm and still find a way to win when the avalanche of threes happen, even when you can't win when they don't happen? So that's just really gonna be the toughest thing going forward. Kyle Anderson gave him some big minutes. He had 5 points at the half, 12 from Naz Reid. And again, this is just one of those nights where Jaden McDaniels didn't have it going, which again hurts from game one, because when you have a type of performance he gave you in game one, you want to be able to leave with that W and take advantage of that type of performance, because you will have nights like this where he's not giving you that same type of production. Now, when we go to the third quarter, this was very, very important for me. I wanted to see if the Mavericks were going to come out with a certain intensity, and they tried to. Well, it's not even that they tried to, but they got to it in the middle of the quarter. It was real scary for me when I saw the first play of the second half be a Karl-Anthony Towns 3 off a flare screen from Rudy Gobert, which my notes tell me put them up 15. So, right, they were leading by 12 going into the half. The first play of the half is Karl-Anthony Towns with the 3. They go up 15. They had a little run going on there, Minnesota. And then Luka eventually hits the 3 over McDaniels. And at some point, they're starting to cook even more. So Dallas goes on that 13-3 run. Luka hits the 3 over McDaniels. It's now an 8-point lead. And I feel like there was 2 misses after that for Rudy Gobert, where he was just poor in the post. We know that that's not his strength or anything, but it was really glaring. And in a time like this, they, to me, and I put right here in my notes, bunnies. There was 2 possessions where he tried to do a move or something, and he airballed like a little hook float shot over the rim, completely missed everything. And there was another one where he got an offensive rebound, and he literally missed a bunny. And I just feel like those are the type of possessions and plays where Rudy is going to have to convert. Again, nobody's expecting the ball to be dumped inside to Rudy and him to do post moves and be Akeem Olajuwon. But there's too many times where they do have these type of plays where he gets the ball close to the rim, or he does have some type of mismatch occasionally, and he's super close to the rim, and there's just no way for him to convert. There are some plays in his game. I remember he had a really, really big dunk in the fourth quarter where I was like, there you go, about time. That's what I wanted to see you do in the third quarter with those 2 possessions. You got the offensive rebound, or you had a little ass Jaden Hardy on you, whoever. Just get that motherfucker and dunk it. They're going to need some of that production and some pressure off of the perimeter players, essentially Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards, because they're going to have nights like tonight where the shot's just not falling, and they're going to need something that's easy and doesn't require a heroic bucket. That's why I really like the third quarter for Karl-Anthony Towns. Or no, was that the fourth quarter? The fourth quarter for Karl-Anthony Towns at the beginning. There was, I'm sorry, that's not even the fourth quarter. Let me make sure I remember the correct quarter. The second quarter. He shot the ball horrible all game, but one of these quarters, and I think it was the second, there were a few plays where Karl-Anthony Towns got the ball and he went. It was PJ Washington on him one-on-one a couple times, and he was just able to spin off of him in the post and go right there. A lot of these missed shots are coming from one leg type of contested shots where it don't seem like he's balanced, chucking up the 3-point shots. Ultimately, Karl-Anthony Towns finished the game with, I want to see, what did he do in the fourth quarter? He barely played, right, which was very interesting, and I think it was actually a good call. But yeah, in the second half, Karl-Anthony Towns were 1 of 5 and 1 of 3 from 3. It's a lot, out of the 5 shots he took, 3 of them were threes. When you have so much success throughout the course of the game close to the basket, it kind of blows my mind when guys still find themselves shooting majority of 3-point shots. I get it, especially when you're big like Karl-Anthony Towns, floor spacing for guys like Ant and whatnot. But at the same time, you got to start getting in when you fit in. But yeah, not the third quarter. Excuse me on that. He only went 1 of 4 in the third quarter. And 3 of those 6 points for him came at the free throw line. So I believe that was the second quarter where, again, he had 2 really good post moves. And I kind of felt like, okay, here comes Cat starting to wake up. But I don't think we got any more of that. There was also some plays, I will say, where Luka did some questionable shit. I think they were more in the first half. So you have a play where Luka was trying to outlet it That happened a couple times. He was just trying to play a little too fast, and he turned the ball over. He had one where he threw it to Gafford. Gafford made a wide receiver type catch and was able to make that crazy finish. But then, yeah, you go throughout the course of this game. McDaniels hit a big shot for the Timberwolves, and that put them back up 8. Luka had a turnover. It goes back up to 10. Jaden Hardy then hits a floater. It's back down to 8. I love the game that Hardy had tonight. Goes back to 8. He's not always going to make shots, but just his aggression and his ability to parlay that with his playmaking is a huge step for him, especially coming off the bench for them. Josh Green then hits the wing 3 from Luka, off the assist from Luka, I believe it was. That makes it a 5-point game. 21-7 run ultimately for the Dallas Mavericks. Then P.J. Washington gets the steal on Cat. Again, just not the greatest basketball from Karl-Anthony Towns. I just don't understand how that happens. I don't think P.J. Washington should be ripping the ball out of Karl-Anthony Towns' hands. And then at a certain stretch in the middle of this third quarter, the big run, Luka at one point scored or assisted on 7 of the 9 field goals. 7 out of the 9 field goals that the Mavericks had scored. And then Hardy hit the 3 that put them down 2. Just an incredible quarter for the Mavericks. This is the quarter that kind of gave them that spark to ultimately go on and win the game. And then in the fourth quarter is where everything really started to get going. So they won this quarter ultimately by 8 points, just enough to win the game. And again, Anthony Edwards, 2 shots in the fourth quarter. To me, just not acceptable. Not acceptable at all. Naz Reid, really the highlight of this team of tonight's game. He gave them 8 points, led them in scoring in the fourth quarter. They only essentially had 4 guys score. No buckets from Jaden McDaniels, not even a field goal attempt. Karl-Anthony Towns only played 3 minutes in the fourth quarter, which, again, I credit the Minnesota Timberwolves for doing, because then the guy that came and took his minutes, Naz Reid, was actually one of the big catalysts that gave you a chance to potentially win the game, and ultimately missed the game-winning shot, which was surprising to see him even get that look. And then on the flip side, again, you can judge him however you want to, but you have to just trust Kyrie is knowing what he's doing. 13 fourth quarter points after having a really tough start to the game offensively. 4 or 5 from three-point land. This dude missed 3 free throws. You got to understand, Kyrie missed 3 free throws. One of the best free throw shooters in our league right now. Uncharacteristically misses 3 free throws. The 2 that he missed back-to-back, extremely big, but then he redeems himself by making the corner 3 from the left wing. No, from the left corner, he makes that 3. Very, very big shot to make up for the missed free throws. And then even more importantly was the playmaking. There was one possession, I know y'all remember, when he was attacking and he lost the ball and somehow still throw the lob to Gafford. I think that was big. I seen him make countless plays and lobs to Gafford and Lively and different things like that. And then you pair that with what Luka Doncic gave you, which was another 5 assists. Both of these guys gave you 18 points and 8 assists with no turnovers while going 5 for 7 from three-point land. That's exactly what you're looking for from your star duo in the fourth quarter to win a game. And on the flip side, Minnesota, you got 3 minutes from Karl-Anthony Towns, and you got 2 shot attempts from Anthony Edwards that ultimately gave you 6 fourth quarter points, 4 of those points coming from the free throw line. That's a very disappointing quarter for the Minnesota Timberwolves. If those 2 guys continue to play that way in the fourth quarter, they will not have a chance in the series at all, and they will get swept. That's just the easiest way I can put it. The production that Naz Reid gives you is supposed to be a cherry on top. You should not be relying on it down the stretch and to win you a game, especially at home. Things happen. A guy like Naz Reid can get hot. He does it all the time. He does it in the majority of the season. But the one thing for the Mavericks is those 2 guys are there in the most important moments consistently, and they've been that way this entire playoff run. We know exactly who's taking. When Luka, that last shot, when Luka hit it against Rudy on that switch, which Van Gundy made a good point, and this is going to be this is why the Rudy thing is it's always a complicated conversation, because you got guys like me who I really don't care too much about Rudy to hate him. I also don't give much care in the world for Rudy to really like just love him. I think he is who he is, and I accept it because you give it credit. But I also look at some other things that other people do. I just don't go as extreme. I'm not one of these people like Gilbert or Uncle Perk who are saying give the awards back. I'm not going that far. You have to respect what he does defensively. But he is interesting. He is very interesting because you do have some moments where somebody who's coached in this league and has had success, like Stan Van Gundy, is saying, hey, if Dallas is going to hunt that switch, if you're Minnesota, he maybe shouldn't be out there on the floor. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I think it's very easy to say that in a hindsight world where LUKA makes it, because then if LUKA misses the shot, they win the game and it's not that big of a conversation. But because he does make the shot, because they do go on to win the game, that is a conversation that I probably will see pop up in some talking shows or from talking heads and on social media. And I think it's not a bad conversation to have. But again, that's what makes Rudy so interesting around this conversation, where it's like, this is why so many people love him, because his teams are number one in defense and he does all of this rim protection and he can hold his own on switch and different things. He is elite defensively. You cannot take that away from him. That's why when people try to go too far, they look very silly and clownish, because you can't just discredit everything the man does defensively. That's just silly. But you also can't ignore different things like this. And it is kind of crazy that sometimes you have to think about removing the defensive player of the year. What is he, 4 times now? Sometimes you have to think about certain situations of removing him off of the floor. And that goes back to a lot of the criticism where some other people were like, don't you always want the best defender on the floor? Good conversation, potentially, depending on who's having it. It's going to be some jackass shit being said, so be prepared if you're a Minnesota Timberwolves fan. I'm just letting you know now. I wouldn't even use my energy to engage in that discourse. Y'all got bigger fish to fry, but just prepare yourself. But yeah, ultimately, Luka Doncic, 32 points, 9 rebounds, 13 assists. Kyrie wasn't the prettiest game, but he came through when it mattered, gave you 20 points, 6 assists, and 4 rebounds. And again, the dynamic duo up front of Gafford and Lively combines to give you 30 points and 14 rebounds with 5 block shots. And on the other end, Towns gives you 15 and 7. Rudy gives you, 31 and 17. So they're about fair. And then you add in Naj Reid off the bench with 23 points. And the Timberwolves win that matchup. They win that matchup. Without a doubt, they win that matchup. No doubt about it. 30 points, 30 points, 13 rebounds to 31 and 17. You get the 5 block shots from there. For some reason, just felt like the timely baskets came from the Mavericks guys. I just feel like Derek Lively is so relentless on the offensive glass. Even if he's not necessarily getting the offensive rebound, but just some of those extra plays that he makes. Josh Green is the same way. Josh Green had 3 offensive rebounds in tonight's game. Again, he had 3 offensive rebounds. Again, just relentless, flying around, tapping the ball out, doing all the different things. Luka had a big one where he tapped it out. They weren't able to score. Derrick Jones Jr. missed the corner 3. He taps it out. Goes to Kyrie. Kyrie misses the 3 as well from the top of the key. They weren't able to convert. But just those extra effort possessions go a long way. As you see, you ultimately win this game by 1 point. Every possession matters in the playoffs. But points in the paint for Dallas. That's keeping them alive. And even though this 3-point shot isn't falling as much as they want to, they ultimately was able to bounce back with a good enough second half shooting and ended up shooting 38% from 3. They shot the same exact 3-point shooting, 12 of 31 for both teams at 38.7% from the field. 22 free throws for the Mavericks, 32 for the Timberwolves. Both teams left points at the line. 6 points at the line for Minnesota, and then 7 points at the line for Dallas. Very uncharacteristic for Dallas to leave 7 points on there, especially when those 7 points come from 3 Kyrie Irving misses. This is tough. You have to give some type of grace for the Timberwolves because they've battled all playoffs long. And like I said, they have the personnel, they have the talent, they have a young superstar in Anthony Edwards who can go out and have a 40-point game. They have that in Karl-Anthony Towns. They have a great team defensively and collectively. They know what they're doing. But losing these 2 games to a team like the Mavericks on these type of performances that they have, it's tough. It's going to be a very steep hill to climb and overcome, and that's the only way I can leave it. I just don't know. At home, role players play better. You got 0 of 7 3-point shooting from Derrick Jones and P.J. Washington. You cannot expect that, man. You cannot expect that. We've seen some of the performances P.J. Washington has had. We've seen some of the performances Derrick Jones Jr. has had. I wouldn't count on these 2 dudes not being able to make 1 3-point shot in the course of a game. Minnesota, you got your work cut out for you. Luka Doncic saves the day. An incredible game. Another incredible series. I don't know what other adjustments you can make. Keep blitzing for sure, but even when you blitz, he finds a way to get 32 and 13. And 5 of 11 from 3. And again, when you blitz, you allow 7 3-point shots to be open. I feel like P.J. Washington, every shot P.J. Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. shot from the perimeter wide open. You open up those shots. These guys ain't missing those, man. They're not missing those for an entire series. So pick your poison. This is why I ultimately picked the Mavericks. Like I said again, Luka in the pick and roll, and the way he's able to manipulate defenses to create shots for others and then create shots for himself. And you pair that with a guy like Kyrie, who confidence never wavers, and he's not really rattled. He's been here before, and it's a tough dynamic duo. As always, this is a place you want to be locked in for all playoff basketball. This is Pee Wee the Plug. I will see you guys next time. I'm out. Peace.